This is how I would answer questions. Before you called me a genius, that was the first time I ever heard someone refer to me as a genius. So it said they'd ask me a question, and then I would look up to the sky, like look at the ceiling, and then look down and have the right answer. To them, they're like, that was my process. What they didn't realize was that in that moment, I was praying. Because there would be questions for which I had no answer. I'm like, okay, God, what's the answer? Is it A? Is it B? And then in my spirit, I'd feel like it's B.
Yeah.
I'd say B. So long story short, we got through the quarterfinals, and then the next day was semis and finals.
Yeah.
I couldn't sleep that night.
Yeah,
Speaking of fear, trepidation, I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
Woke up, couldn't have breakfast.
Yeah. Did you ask yourself, what am I gotten myself into? What was I thinking?
What was I thinking? Yeah, like who told me that this was supposed to be a guys from Namilyango, I mean from Smart. Like I was out of my depth.
Yeah.
And so
if you listen to yesterday's episode, this is a continuation of the same. I was having a conversation with a dear friend of mine called The Solution Ngonzi. He's a CEO and a founder. He's a farmer. He is the leader of Gone Rogue Strategies, also an author, a very great guy. I consider him to be a genius. And in this section, we were breaking out to talk about something to do with fear, venturing into fear. And Ngonzi tells us one of the most epic stories you'll ever hear about him and venturing into the unknown when he was in secondary 5. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Life Signatures podcast with Lawrence Namale. Lawrence is a life coach, author, and keynote speaker who loves to tackle different topics on purpose, productivity, and resilience. His mission in life is to awaken all your boundless possibilities available in you. Life Signatures podcast is dedicated to bring to reality every single person who knows that deep down in their gut, there's got to be more to life than this. And now, here is your host, Lawrence Namale.
But anyway, let me ask you a pointed question here. I know you've been alive for quite a while. Tell me of a moment where you experienced fear and you actually went ahead and did it anyway, and what came out of it?
Experienced fear and did it, and there was a time in 2004.
Yeah.
I think I was in Form 5 at that time. So I was coming back from the bathrooms, and I came into the class, and I found a question written on the blackboard, and the deputy headmistress had walked out. So I realized she had come to the economics class. She, who was a biology teacher, had come to the economics class and had written a question on the blackboard and walked away. And so I came, and like David asked Goliath, the people around him, what's that about?
Yeah.
So he said, apparently that's a question for a quiz, and whoever is interested should go to the head teacher's office. Mm-hmm. And so this was the question: how can companies raise capital using the capital markets? I'd never heard of that.
Form 5.
I'd never heard of capital markets. But what I knew is, every now and then a company needs to raise capital. Before that, as a child, I'd been interested in the concept of buying and selling shares. So when I looked at the question on the blackboard, I thought to myself, I don't know anything about this. I'm not the brightest person in this class.
Yeah.
But this seems like something worth knowing. So I followed her, went to her office, and I told her, I saw you had written something in our class blackboard. I'd like to say that I'm interested in being part of this quiz. So she looks at me and says, but are you sure? I said, yeah. And so we had to be 2 people. So what she did is she now went to the senior 6 class and got the most brilliant person in their class, like their number 1 performer, to balance out my average academic situation, that in my S5 class, I was average. So they said, for them to have a better chance, let us get the real brilliant one, the one we know is brilliant, and add him to this one who just has guts. So they put us together and we spent some time researching. We put together our essay. We came out number 11. We got into a quiz. Now, that is where the fear comes. So this was a televised quiz. And among the people in the room were people from the best schools in the country. The Budos, the Gayazas, the Smarks, the biggest schools. And then there was also me from my school. Okay, my school was big, but there was me, this little guy who did not have the IQ of his partner. And so, have you been in a quiz? When they ask you those questions and then there is a timer that's going off, my brother.
There are very many permutations in a quiz. There is the crowd, there is the fear that you're going to forget, there is the fear that the question is going to be difficult, and so on. Very many permutations.
And then there are also those hot girls that are looking at you and they're thinking, it's a guy, and you're going to flunk. So my brother, I remember having my stomach upset. I couldn't eat. So we get into the quiz. We went to round 1, round 2, and then by the end of that day, the first day, round 3 was the quarterfinals. For some reason, we were in the quarterfinals. What people didn't realize that every time we took a break, when guys would go to make tea, to eat food, I would go to the toilet and try and empty my stomach, and then get on my knees and say, God,
help me.
Help me. I am out of my league.
And you're punching far above your weight.
And then I'd come back and someone told me that this is how I'd answer questions. Before you called me a genius, that was the first time I ever had someone refer to me as a genius. So they'd say, they'd ask me a question, and then I would look up to the sky, like look at the ceiling, and then look down and have the right answer. To them, they're like, that was my process. What they didn't realize was that in that moment, I was praying. Because there would be questions for which I had no answer. I'm like, okay, God, what's the answer? Is it A? Is it B? And then in my spirit, I'd feel like it's B. And I'd say B. So long story short, we got through the quarterfinals, and then the next day was semis and finals. I couldn't sleep that night. Speaking of fear, trepidation, I couldn't sleep. Woke up, couldn't have breakfast.
Did you ask yourself, what have I gotten myself into? What was I thinking?
What was I thinking? Like who told me that this is supposed to be a guys from Namilyango, from Smart? Like I was out of my depth. And so the semis come up, and somehow we get to the semis. And then we are in the finals. Routine repeat. Go to the bathroom, ease myself, get on my knees and pray. And then at the end of the thing, the last part, we tied. And then we had to
do a final decider.
A final decider, which we almost tied. At that point, I had come to the end of myself. I was ready to just walk around and say, guys, I quit. It was tense. So I remember we were with Chitovu. So these are the finals. Remember how I came to this place? I just wanted to know what was the answer
to the question on the board.
That's all I wanted to know.
Wow.
I just thought it would be something good to know.
Yeah.
And so when the results came out, eventually, it turned out that they had taken tallies for everyone in addition to the school.
Individual tallies.
Individual tallies. And my partner's tally was...
the Form 6 guy.
The Form 6, the most brilliant guy.
Yeah.
Was 69.7.
You can still remember that stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the other guys were like 70 and 69.
Yeah.
Our opponents.
Yeah.
So I think there was a guy with about 80. And then the one guy who just wanted to know about how to raise money using the capital markets, my tally was 93.3%.
Whoa.
And we won.
Whoa.
We won that Capital Market Secondary Schools Challenge of 2004, and our prize involved getting shares, which I still do have.
Wow.
In DFCU Bank. And the best part was I got to get on a plane for the very first time, and I went to Nairobi to tour the Nairobi Stock Exchange, and I had a breakfast meeting with the CEO of the Securities Exchange.
You guy.
I had a mid-morning lunch with the chairman of the Capital Markets Authority of Kenya.
You guy.
So let me tell you, my one day in Nairobi that year, 2004. Yeah, arrived in Nairobi Jam at about 6:37. Got to Hilton Hotel for breakfast at 7.
You guy, I've never eaten at the Hilton.
I had lunch at the Intercontinental.
You guy.
And then I had dinner at another 5-star.
Maybe Serena or something.
There were 3 hotels. There was Plaza. Is there a hotel called Plaza Hotel?
I don't know.
But you know Intercontinental.
I know Intercontinental, I know Hilton. Hilton is a place where many people normally meet. You know, when you are meeting in town, say, meet me at Hilton. Never had breakfast at Hilton. Just met there very many guys.
Rasta, the breakfast at Hilton was about 18 meter, an 18 meter U.
Wow.
Like 18 meters that way, 18 meters this way.
Wow.
With all my hunger. That's a story for another day. But we came out, and not only was I number one, not only was my school number one, me, the average boy from Ginger, totally unfit to even be in this school. I remember the first day I was in that school, my OB from primary walked up to me and said, "Even you're here." That question disturbed my mind because I felt like I'm coming from, those low schools to now an elite school, and my OB is telling me I do not belong here. So I had that
inferiority kind of a thing. Yeah.
So the day I walked into this class and I saw this question, for me, it was just something I felt I needed to know. But getting through that fear and just...
So the thing is, the most interesting thing is this. You had no clue that there's going to be a competition.
No.
No clue whatsoever. I mean, no clue. And you had no clue that it's going to be an inter-school thing.
Nothing.
You had no clue that there's going to be shares. No clue that there's going to be a flight.
Nothing.
No clue there's going to be, dinner, breakfast, lunch at 5-star hotels in Nairobi. What took you there was what?
I needed an answer.
You needed an answer. And you provided the answer. And the rest, as they say, is history. Because we're discussing here how we can leverage the moments of the unknown. Because all this thing is unknown to you, isn't it?
True.
Everything that you experienced that came to your life was an unknown. And chances are that, not chances are, but it is actually a fact. You're not the only guy who saw that question on the board.
No one in my class bothered to stand up.
Everyone saw the question. You are the guy who responded to the question. And now one step led to another, and then another, and then another, and then another.
Speaking of questions, let me just say this for you real quick. the quality of the life that we live is dependent on the depth and the quality of the questions we are willing to seek answers for.
Yeah.
Or the questions we are willing to ask ourselves. You know, you and I have had conversations, and you've had conversations with other people.
Yeah.
But you realize that the depth of conversation with certain people follows certain questions.
Yeah.
That if you ask me the right question,
Yeah.
you will get a plethora
Yeah.
of information.
Yeah.
And that is the thing about life. It is unknown because it's a question of us. Like when God created the world, He had certain questions for which you and I are those answers to those questions. I want you to think about that very carefully. So if you are not in this constant place of asking yourself, why am I here?
Basically having a spirit of adventure, approaching life from the atmosphere of from the angle that there's something has got to be solved here. There's an adventure that has got to know. Having this curiosity in you to know, to keep knowing. That's why I keep going back and telling us, I don't think there's this thing that you can actually secure the future. I think you can every time the day unfolds, gives you the opportunities there are for you to explore and so on and so forth. And to the degree that you explore, you can basically, I think the best we can do in life is to keep growing. Not to secure ourselves. To me, security talks of, gated community with dogs that have been imported and so on and so forth. Keeping things intact, keeping things stable.
I asked a policeman around the time of November riots.
A special shout out to my mentor Jeffrey Howard of Visionary Business University, found at mastermindmentor.com, who has graciously provided me with the soundtrack and the introductory track to this podcast. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you for listening to Life Signatures Radio. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe to Life Signatures Radio on iTunes, Stitcher, or visit our website at lifesignatures.libsyn.com. Life Signatures Radio, fresh, clean, and inspiring.